I asked AI about the Karmelo Anthony case, and what it told me forced me to take a hard look at something most people are dancing around. On April 2nd, 2025, two 17-year-old boys showed up to a high school track meet in Frisco, Texas. They didn't know each other. By the end of that morning, one of them was dead and the other was in handcuffs. The one in handcuffs was Karmelo Anthony, and right now, he's on trial for first-degree murder. I understand why he responded the way he responded. He felt like he was in danger. I can't say he overreacted, and I can't say he was fully justified either. What I can say is that he responded to what he felt in that moment. And if we're being honest, that's what most of us would do. I decided to do something different with this case. I asked AI to play the role of a district attorney, a defense lawyer, and a judge, using only the actual documented facts. No speculation, no social media noise, just the record. Here's what the facts actually say. Anthony walked into a tent at the stadium, a tent that belonged to a rival school called Memorial High School. Students asked him to leave. By multiple witness accounts, they asked him as many as 15 times. He didn't leave. Words were exchanged. At some point, Anthony said, and this is documented, "Touch me, see what happens." Then Austin Metcalf touched him, and Anthony pulled a 3.5-inch folding knife and stabbed Metcalf in the chest. Metcalf died at the hospital. Anthony didn't run far. A coach stopped him. When police arrived, he told them straight up, "I'm not alleged, I did it." Then he said, "He put his hands on me. I told him not to." Now the state of Texas charged this kid with first-degree murder. And that's where I have a problem. First-degree murder requires intent. It requires that Anthony walked into that tent with a plan to kill someone. Nothing in the documented record supports that. What the record shows is a confrontation that escalated fast, a verbal warning, a physical provocation, and a split-second reaction from a teenager who was surrounded and felt threatened. When I asked AI to step into the role of a neutral judge, it said something that stuck with me. The reasonable person standard doesn't ask what a calm person sitting in a courtroom 6 months later would have done. It asks what a reasonable person would have believed in that exact moment. Surrounded, outnumbered, with someone already putting hands on them. I don't carry a weapon, partly for this exact reason, because I know my own response when I feel a realistic threat. When that happens, you have one choice: put that threat down or get that threat away from you. That's not anger. That's survival instinct. And Karmelo Anthony is 19 years old, facing life in prison for acting on that same instinct. At worst, in my opinion, this is manslaughter. Reckless conduct that caused a death. Not a planned killing. A scared kid who made a deadly decision in less than a second. Now here's the part that bothers me just as much as the charge itself. During jury selection, the prosecution used their strikes to remove every single black juror from the strike zone. All 3 of them. The defense filed what's called a Batson challenge, a formal legal objection arguing that the prosecution removed those jurors specifically because of their race. The prosecution's defense was that all 3 women were educators, and they didn't want educators on a jury for a case involving a school event. Here's the problem with that. The defense pointed out that a white female juror, who was also an educator, was allowed to stay on the panel. The prosecution said she was different because she taught cosmetology to adults at a trade school. The judge accepted that explanation, denied the Batson challenge, and an all-white jury was seated. A black teenager, a white victim, Collin County, Texas. No black jurors. And white nationalists were outside the courthouse on the first day of jury selection. I'm not saying the jury will get it wrong. I'm saying the conditions for getting it wrong are all present. The AI judge told me something I keep coming back to. A first-degree murder conviction on these facts would require the jury to believe Anthony walked into that tent planning to kill someone. And the record doesn't show that. What it shows is fear, a confrontation, and a reaction. You can disagree with what Karmelo Anthony did. You can wish he had walked out of that tent when they asked him to. I wish he had too. but wishing someone had made a better decision is not the same as calling it murder. The question this jury has to answer is whether a reasonable person in that tent, in that moment, could have believed they were in danger. I think most of us already know the answer to that. The real question is whether this jury will be allowed to see it that way.